Great. And then can we share a, Katerina, you're going to share a visual for me? She's away from her post. This is going to make great video right now, Cormac.
You spoke too soon.
All right, here we go. All right, well, Katerina at some point is going to share a video, a visual for us, but she looks like she's dealing with some technical issues. But rather than hold off on that, I just wanted to kind of talk to everybody real quick because we had a brief kind of powwow with the leadership earlier this week, and I just wanted to kind of make sure to step back, give broad picture of what we've done to date and where we're headed with this training a little bit. What we're hopeful for is by going through the process like this in small pieces in sequence for you guys, that is going to allow you guys to feel comfortable to start to use this as a resource. The real kind of absolutely this is the way we're doing it kind of stuff is really going to hit in as we move towards the end of the summer into September. It's not going to be like any real strict deadline on certain things. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to explore. So in terms of that, just to kind of step back, we started off this process back at the spring in service by going through assessment data, how to get assessment data. We targeted specifically the AFLs, but there are other ones we could also use. Those data that we generate from the assessment process is exactly what you guys can use to identify student needs. You're also going to be looking at how kids did on their previous progress. I mean, as far as the previous calendar year or school year, but the big thing is the assessments that we do indicates need. From those needs is where we move into what we started working on last week, which is using ACE. And in ACE, you guys have already learned how to do the student profile piece, the learner profile, and being able to kind of put in some characteristics. The process of doing that for all of our teachers is also a process of analyzing how we teach, because you're actually putting in writing the ways you teach, things that you do probably a lot of times intuitively. So this is going to be an interesting process right there for everybody to do. But now we have the learner profile and we have our assessment data. We search for our goals, and that's what we learned also on Friday, is how to search for the goals. Based on the goals we select in ACE, we can create those data sheets for us. And right now, you guys are all creating data sheets for this ESY, and you have two choices really. You can use a data sheet generated by ACE if you found that goal. If you did that when we did that last week, and that works fine because you're printing out, you're still collecting paper data. If you felt that you'd already had data sheets ready that you pulled from the drive or that was provided for the student and you want to use those to start, that's fine too. Your goal and your mastery criteria are on the IEP. They're going to be the same regardless. So the data will be consistent. Today, what Cormac's going to do is kind of go through, see if there's any questions on those steps that we just talked about that we've already accomplished, and kind of go through that with us, and then kind of talk about like they're wrapping it up where we ended last Friday with now we're talking about creating data sheets. This is great. We have a meeting again next Thursday where we will start to talk a little bit more about what we do in ACE with those data, and that'll be stuff that we'll talk about data entry, expectations regarding that. And then when we have that data entry, that's when we are really tapping into all the things ACE does. And so for us, this summer is our transition. We're transitioning to a whole new system. We're learning this. We want you guys to be comfortable with it. It's going to make us a little bit more analytic in all of our teaching processes, but it's going to take us a little while also to learn how to navigate and get used to it. So I think we've made some real significant first steps. We've got still work to do on that. What you guys can expect moving on is this summer is slowly shifting over to using those ACE data sheets and those sorts of things, and using them to activate IEP goals that are already in place. For anybody who comes up on an annual review date where we have to do a PEP, that'll be a little different, because for the new PEPs, we're not going to do it twice. Why do it the old way and then adjust to the new day? We will work with you, and you will go through for the new PEPs, use ACE for every new PEP moving forward. So we start the transition of bringing this in. So this is where we're at with the process. This is our goal. Our goal is for you guys to have all these resources to help you with instruction. We should have better goals. We should have a more detailed teaching strategy laid out for people. We should be able to do easier and more effective data analysis, but we are not, we don't want to rush through this. So please continue to explore. I know a lot of folks already have used ACE data sheets, and that's great because when you found a goal in the goal bank for one of your kids' goals, matched it up, and then the intricacies of that is what Cormac's going to go over today. So thank you guys for the first steps in the journey. I'm really excited where we're at, and from here it's just going to get more exciting. So Cormac, it's all yours.
Wonderful, thank you, John. So yeah, I think we can start off with any questions that have popped up since our trainings last week. So last week, to John's point, we covered items in the learner app on Thursday, and then we took a deep dive into finding lessons in the lesson bank using our 3 different ways, and then activated some lesson plans. And we were a little bit rushed at the end of last Friday's training regarding editing, and I'm happy to kind of go in and kind of just recover some of those specific items regarding editing the lesson plans. But I want to put it out to everybody. Are there any questions that have popped up in the last week since you've been using the system? And again, feel free to turn your mic on to ask the question. You can also pop it in the chat.
Don't be shy, folks.
I will say from some of the breakout rooms last week when folks were in there looking for lessons, I'd recommend, if you have a chance, kind of going through the recordings that are being shared from last week's trainings, because there was some really nice discussion, some really nice problem solving. Folks had questions to find a specific goal for, to find a lesson plan for a specific goal, a specific skill that they were trying to work on with their student. And we discussed some different ways to kind of look at the skill and how we might find a lesson plan that fits what you're trying to accomplish with that particular goal. So I would recommend using those practices. Has anyone contacted the help desk to get assistance finding a lesson plan? If you haven't, that's what they're there to do. So don't be afraid to reach out to the help desk and have them assist you find a lesson plan for goals that you've already written. And to John's point, in terms of upcoming IEPs, when you're writing new IEPs, new PIPs, we do have a training sequence kind of going through how to set up ACE records for new IEPs so that you're not doing, to John's point, the process twice. You could utilize our bank of lessons to write different goals, better goals, goals that line up with the lesson plans you might be utilizing to teach those particular skills that you're targeting for your students. And that's something that we can discuss in a later training. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go and log on to the ACE. And sorry, one second, I didn't go over what our goals are for today. Our goals for today are to just finish talking about editing lesson plans. Because again, we rushed through that at the end of our last training on Friday. And then I want to go through how to activate, adjust, and print those data sheets. We touched on that last week. I just want to go into it a little bit more detail. And I also want to show you where to find those data sheets once you've saved them, because we talked a little bit how to change the data sheet, how to add more information to them. I want to show you where to find those data sheets. I also want to show you some of the other data sheets that are available to you in the resources app, in the classroom resources app. So I'm going to jump in and share some of those data sheets as well that might help with situations where you're trying to run maybe multiple trials across different programs. Maybe you want to have one data sheet for the whole day. I'll show you some options that we have, some available resources that you can utilize and edit to fit your needs. Okay. All right. So I'm going to log on to the ACE. So again, web browser, email address, password. We're going straight into the app library, and we are going to go into the curriculum app. In the curriculum app, we want to get to our learners' active lessons. So again, lessons that we activated going through the activation process. Okay, so I'm in the curriculum dashboard. I could click on view lessons right here, click on the 30 active lessons for my training student, or I could click, I'm using my quick links up here, go to the learners' lessons by clicking on this hyperlink. Okay, it doesn't matter which one I use, they're going to take me to the same page. Okay, so we have our list of activated lessons. We know that they're activated because these lessons have objective numbers, they have activation dates. These lessons are currently active for our student. Recall from last week, over the left-hand side, you can switch between your students' active lessons and lessons that you put in archive, lessons that you activated previously that you're no longer teaching, okay? We want to get back into the editing page. So I'm going to go to a lesson that I already have set up. It's lesson here, 1.1. I'm going to click on our action button, and we have a number of different options that we can that we have available for this lesson plan using our action button, our drop down menu. Okay. First one we're going to go to is that edit button. So we're going to get back into the editing page that we discussed last week. And I really want to just filter down to managing the instructional plan. So that's the targets that are specific to this particular lesson. So if we scroll down and open up that section, so that's your instructional plan, that's where we can play around with the targets that we set that we have set up for the lesson. And I was talking at the end of our training on Friday about the different things you can do with each set of targets. So the first thing you can do is you can delete the targets, okay? So there you have a red trash can beside the targets 1.01, banana, apple, orange. That enables me to delete those targets. The little blue notepad with a pencil, that enables me to edit the targets, okay? So I did that very quickly last week. I can click on that little notepad, make changes to these targets, add in more instructions, add in more information regarding the student's response. The blue tick enables me to continue.
Hey, Cormac, can you slow down?
Oh, sorry. A lot of echo going on there. Apologies. The green tick enables me to continue or discontinue data collection for different targets.
Cormac.
Is everyone where I am? Oh,
Cormac,
yes.
Can you please go back?
Sure, of course. Sorry.
He's
I'm gonna go back to the app library. Is everyone logged in?
So are we in the app library, guys?
So go ahead and click on curriculum.
I went in there. Okay.
And then we're gonna go to our students' active lessons. So we can either click on this big tick under the view lessons widget, or we could click on learners lessons here at the top using our quick links. Okay. So when you click on your learners lessons, you're going to be brought to the lessons that are activated for the student profile you're currently on. So I'm currently on my training student, Cormac Jr. Remember from our last trainings last week, click on the blue graduate icon at the very top right-hand corner of the screen. That opens up your student selector. You can switch between the different students you have access to. Okay. Everyone get to this page so far? So from here, we're going to select one of the lessons that we want to get into the editing page for. Okay, so I'm going to go to a lesson that I have activated for Cormac Jr. It's a lesson, match identical objects. I just selected the lesson by clicking on the box. And beside the objective number, you can see that it's now highlighted. And then I'm going to click on the action button right here. So that's those three horizontal lines. That's your action button. That gives you a menu of options that you can perform on the lesson that you currently have selected. So I've selected match identical objects. You may have selected a different lesson on your end. And I just want to recover how we edit a lesson, okay? How we can play around with changing a lesson that we activated from the bank. We want to make some tweaks to it, okay? We want to change certain procedures within this lesson plan for this particular student, okay? So I'm going to click on that edit button. We've come to the page that we finished up our last training last week, okay, where we are editing the lesson. Now, this lesson that I'm working on here is an essay lesson, okay? That's your discrete trial lessons. If you've pulled up an IT lesson to edit, some of the things are going to be similar, some of the things are going to be different. TA lesson, again, some items of the lesson data sheet will be the same, some items will be different in terms of the names of each of the sections, okay? What will be consistent across all three is an instructional plan, okay? That's what I want to talk about for today's training before we move on to data sheets. The instructional plan for your essay lessons, your discrete trial lessons, that's your teaching targets, okay? So for this lesson, This lesson is match identical objects. This is the instructional plan is going to specify what objects I should be using to teach this skill and teach the student to match same object to same object. Okay. If you're looking at an IT lesson, those of you who have maybe went to the editing page for an incidental teaching lesson, you're going to see context you're teaching an incidental teaching lesson across. Okay. So maybe you have an incidental teaching lesson for request and assistance. The contexts are going to be related to different situations the student might need to ask help with, right? Maybe they have difficulty opening the door or tying their shoelaces or pulling up the zipper of their jacket or opening a container to retrieve their snack for morning snack. Okay, things like that. The instructional plan under a task analysis lesson is going to be your behavior chains that you're teaching. A task analysis lesson is teaching a behavior chain. Okay, so it's going to list all the steps for hand washing, for example, if you're looking at a task analysis lesson to teach hand washing. Okay, turn on the faucet, put your hands under the faucet, put your hand under the soap, press the pump, etc., etc., etc. Okay, what I want to review right now is how we change those teaching targets. Okay, how we change the stimuli we're using for an essay lesson, the context we are using for an IT lesson, the behavior change we're using for a task analysis lesson. Okay, so right now I'm going to click on the instructional plan. That's going to open up that section of the lesson plan for me to edit. Okay, so I'm going to click instructional plan, and this section opens like this. Now, in the instructional plan for an essay lesson, we have sets of targets. Okay, sets of stimuli. That's what I'm utilizing for this lesson, and they are arranged in sublevels. Okay, sublevel 1.01 you can see here, 1.02, 1.03. And so forth. And there are different targets assigned to each sublevel. For each sublevel, I can perform different actions. I can delete the targets by clicking on the red trash can that is over on the right-hand side. I can edit the targets by clicking on the blue notepad with a little tiny pencil. Okay, that enables me to edit those targets because maybe I don't want to use banana, apple, orange. I want to use 3 different objects, okay, for this particular sublevel. The green tick enables me to continue or discontinue data collection. Okay, you might consider discontinuing data collection on a set of targets that you've introduced and the student has mastered already. You didn't realize that. Okay, think of an essay lesson, maybe teaching the student to answer social questions. Maybe you baseline, where do you live? What's your name? How old are you? And you find out in those baseline sessions the student can answer those questions. We're still going to work on social questions with this particular student for this IEP year. So we might want to discontinue data collection for those targets. Okay, we're not going to delete them. Maybe we want to discontinue data collection. We want to keep those data in the system because maybe we need to report on them during the first or on the first progress report. Okay, we might consider discontinuing data collection on a set of targets that are not really working for us. Okay, the example I always use is teaching the student to identify different numbers, okay? Indicate different numbers, okay? Maybe I'm teaching the student to indicate the numbers 1, 2, 3, okay? And they're constantly making errors on 2 and 3 because they look very similar, okay? So I might discontinue data collection on teaching 1, 2, 3 together, and I might decide to teach the numbers 1, 2, 4. Because 1, 2, 4 are a little bit more unlike each other, okay? I don't want to get rid of the data that I've collected for 1, 2, 3 because I'm going to have to report on them, okay, when it's progress reporting time, okay? But I want to take my data for 1, 2, 4 in a different sublevel, so I'm going to discontinue data collection for 1, 2, 3. And then if I click on the arrow again, or the tick again, so there I ticked it, data collection is turned off for 1.01. You see the big red no sign, stop sign. If I click on it again, that turns data collection back on. When I mean data collection turned off and on, that means that when we get into the data entry page, I can't enter data, okay, if the icon looks like this, okay, that's all that means.
Cormac, the check mark is available on the skill acquisition lesson, but not the task analysis?
That's correct.
Okay.
For that, what I would consider doing is adding another chain. And I can certainly jump into a task analysis lesson to show you the editing of a task analysis lesson. That's a really good point. The cell phone enables you to turn data or data collection on and off in our Teach Now feature on the system. Teach Now is paperless data entry. Okay. Now, you all aren't using that just yet. We're going to stick to paper pencil data entry, but at some point, if we're interested in utilizing paperless data entry, this might be a good feature for us to utilize, because it would make certain targets, certain sublevels, certain behavior chains, certain contexts available or not available on the paperless data entry page. Okay, that might be advantageous in situations where you want your direct care staff working on one set of targets at a time. You don't want them accidentally taking data in the wrong place. Okay. Now you'll notice for the sublevels I have on the screen right now, 1.02 through to 1.06, there is no red trash can. The reason why there's no red trash can is because I've already entered data for those sublevels. Okay. I'm not allowed to delete them. You can't delete lessons. We talked about that last week. You can't delete sublevels. You can't delete contexts for IT lessons. You can't delete chains for TA lessons that have data entered already. Okay. 1.01 for this lesson for Cormac Junior has no data entered for it yet. So that's why the red trash can is there. If I click on that, that's going to delete that set of targets. And that's the flexibility that the ACE provides you. Okay, you might find a lesson plan that is really perfect for the skill that you're teaching, but it has too many targets, or it has the wrong targets. It has the wrong social questions. It has the wrong objects that you want to teach identical. You want to teach identity matching with. Okay, so you can delete targets, you can edit targets, you can add more targets. Let me show you how to add targets. We're going to add a set of targets to this lesson. We're going to add a new sublevel. Okay, to do that, we're going to specify what level we want to add it to. So I'm going to add it to level 1 by clicking level 1. And then I'm going to click add sublevel, and then this little window appears on my screen. This is where I'm going to type in more targets. Okay, and then I can add in the same, type in the same instructions as before, the same response information as before, and click submit. And now I have another set of targets added to this particular lesson plan. Okay. Going to hit the save button. We very quickly went through this last week. I just want to briefly talk about it again. The next section on your lesson plan that you can change is the criteria for prompt fading. This is something that we discussed in Thursday's training when we talked about our learner profile. Okay. The criteria for fading the prompt as the student learns the skill. Okay. I can set more specific information for this lesson. Now, for this lesson, if you recall from last week, I've already applied my learner profile to this lesson when I activated it for Cormac Junior. That doesn't have to mean I have to use all elements of my learner profile that I set up. I might want to tweak stuff for this particular lesson. And that might be something that I want to do in the future if the lesson is not going well, if the student is not making progress on the skill that I'm trying to teach. Okay, so I can set up the criteria for moving to a less restrictive prompt. Okay, going from hand over hand physical guidance to prompting at the forearm or a light touch. I can set up my criteria for moving to a more restrictive prompt if the student starts to make errors when I fade the prompt. Okay, so I'm at a 2-second delay gestural prompt for a second. For example, my student starts to make errors. I might want to go back to that immediate prompt cue. Here's my criteria to do that. Get help and revise lesson. Again, lesson's not going well, student's not making progress. I might want to flag it, okay? Or I want my staff to have the information of when they should be flagging it to me, because maybe I'm the supervisor and it's my responsibility to go in and change this lesson plan, work on some remediation strategies, identify what is going and what is not working with how we're trying to teach this particular skill. The mastery criteria that you're seeing here comes from the ACE lesson objectives that we discussed last week, okay? And then the last item here is the alerts for the lesson. These alerts are for Teach Now for paperless data entry, okay? So some really nice features to ensure that your staff follow the teaching plan, basically, okay? Fade the prompt when the prompt should be faded. Go back to a previous prompting step when the student meets criteria to do so, and provide some help alerts on the screen if the student is not making progress, okay? That's something that we will probably discuss in a later training, okay? The assessment section is something that we cannot change. for a lesson, but we can change the maintenance section. Again, I went through this very, very quickly at the end of last week's training, so my apologies if this is a review. But this is where you can change the schedule of maintenance sessions. Maintenance sessions are what you're conducting with master targets. You might want to thin the schedule of reinforcement in those maintenance sessions. That's why there's a reinforcement section there. And then we also want to have a criteria for reteaching, okay? When targets should be retaught because the student is making errors, okay, on those targets that they previously mastered, okay? After we make all our edits, we'll click the close button, and this is going to bring us back to the page that we were previously on, which in this case for me was the learner's active lessons, okay? Now to Abby's point, TA lessons, the edit page looks slightly different. Do you guys want me to go into the TA editing page, or should we move on to data sheets?
I would say data sheets.
Data sheets, okay, great. I say data, you guys say data, that's fun. Okay, so for data sheets, again, we quickly went through this last week, but to review again, to generate a data sheet, I'm going to select the lesson here from the list of active learners. I'm going to stick to my mathematical objects lesson. I'm going to click the action button, and then down at the bottom of our action button list is generate data sheet. So if I click on that, this will ask me to select a sublevel. So we're going to make a data sheet for each set of targets. So a sublevel for our SA lessons, context for our IT lesson, and then behavior chain for our TA lesson. Now, most of our behavior chains, most of the lessons that we are utilizing a task analysis to teach a behavior chain, we are going to be utilizing, we're going to be teaching one behavior chain. Sometimes we might be teaching two. I have one group saying that they are lost. How can I get you back to where I am? Oh, that was a little while ago. Rebecca's group, are you guys still doing okay?
But like some of them like what if you just
Yeah, that was from earlier. You had since clarified it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Patrick, you put your hand up. Can I answer a question?
Yeah, no, I was just going to bring to your attention that Rebecca had her hand up and
Oh,
I saw her comments. So that's what I was going to ask you to address.
thank you for the prompts. I saw it way too late. I appreciate it. Thank you. So data sheet. So we're going to select a sublevel for this SA lesson. I'm going to stick to 1.01. I click the submit button, a new tab. I'm just going to open up on my web browser. This is our data sheet for us to set up and print off. Okay. Now this data sheet is specific to this particular student's lesson for mathematical objects. Okay. So their name is at the top right-hand corner of the data sheet, as is their IEP year that I've set up for this lesson, as is the objective number that I assigned to this lesson, okay? You'll notice under mathematical objects, the objective statement is not the ACE objective statement, it's the learner objective statement that I talked about last week, okay? The learner objective statement is something that I might put in if I use different wording from, if I used different wording on the IEP for the goal versus what is in the ACE system for this lesson, okay? So I had a very more simple goal for this lesson on my IEP, which was Cormac will match objects together independently. I added that into my lesson plan in the editing page. That's what's showing up on the data sheet, okay? And then under the lesson name, we are going to have information on how to teach the lesson. So what the ACE has done for me, it's pulled the information from the lesson plan, the important information that the teacher needs to be able to teach this particular skill. So instead of having all the additional bells and whistles, listing out all the targets in the instructional plan, listing out all the information on assessment and maintenance and all that stuff, it's just giving us the information for the teacher behavior. So how the teacher is going to be setting up a teaching session for this skill, what the expected student behavior is, what the prompt is that we're using to teach the skill and how we're fading it. Okay, so for this particular lesson, I'm using a gestural prompt and I'm fading it via a time delay. And there's my prompting steps. What to do if the student responds correctly or incorrectly. Again, you'll notice one of the edits that I put in last week. My specific reinforcement program for this particular lesson is to provide reinforcement for correct responses on a VR3 schedule. Okay, that information transferred from the lesson plan that I set up. Okay, the changes I made to the lesson plan that was activated for the student has transferred over to the data sheet that I just generated. Okay, And then over on the right-hand side in this top half of the data sheet, we have our criteria for prompt fitting. Okay, again, that's the information transferred over from the lesson plan on the full lesson plan. Okay, our criteria for prompt fitting, our criteria for contacting the supervisor, and the mastery criteria. Okay, so all the information that my staff need to be able to teach this particular skill with these particular targets. These are the targets for 1.01. They are listed in the middle of the data sheet in that green bar. So the targets for 1.01 are banana, apple, and orange. Okay. And then below that, we have our data blocks. Now, the data block that was selected for this lesson plan was a 3-stem array. Okay, 9 trial 3-stem array. And that's the data blocks that I'm seeing here. For each data block, above each data block, we have space for the teacher to write in the date of the teaching session, their initials, where they ran the teaching session, the student's cubby, the main classroom area, the library, okay, classroom B, what prompt step that they're on, okay, that's going to be taken from the codes up here. So we're on the immediate prompt step for this teaching session, prompting step 1, prompting step 2, I'm doing an awful job highlighting these, or prompting step 3. That's what they're going to be writing in here. And then for session, they're going to circle what session they were, what type of session they were conducting. Was it a baseline session when they first introduced these 3 targets? Is it a training session where they're using prompting and prompt fitting? Is it a maintenance session for targets that have been mastered? Or is it a probe session? We talked through some situations where we might use a probe session at the end of our training last Friday. And then for the data block itself, you see each trial is listed vertically from trial 1 to trial 9. For each trial, we have specific information on the target. Okay, so this is a match to sample teaching plan. We're matching object to object. So for trial 1, the target is A. I'm going to be holding up the banana. And then in my array in front of the student, the comparison stimuli are going to be arranged in this order. The comparison banana is going to be on the left of the 3-stem array. The apple will be in the middle, and the orange will be on the right. And then I have space to write in the data corresponding to the student's performance on this particular trial, whether they perform correctly, independently, correctly with a prompt, incorrectly, or incorrectly with a prompt. Okay. For each trial, the target will change and the array will rotate. Okay. At the bottom of the data sheet screen, the generate data rate screen, you're going to have a close button. So just to close this data sheet down.
We have a question.
Oh, certainly.
The BLTR, MT, and PR, what do those stand for?
Sorry, where are you saying that?
Under session.
Under session. Oh, BLTR, MT, PR. BL stands for baseline. So the staff will circle that when they're running a baseline session, when they're introducing a new set of targets and they are establishing whether the student can perform the skill with those targets. TR stands for training. So I've established the student cannot perform the skill to mastery criteria. So I'm going to have to do some teaching with these targets on this particular skill. Remember, the skill is matching identical objects. The stimuli are banana, apple, orange. So I'm going to be teaching the student to perform that skill with these targets. The skill being the student pointing to the correct comparison with an isolated finger of one hand. The learner touches the correct comparison and then releases contact and does not touch a second comparison stimulus in that trial. MT stands for maintenance. So after targets have been mastered, okay, after we have met mastery criteria for these 3 targets, banana, apple, orange, I want to run maintenance sessions to make sure the student's maintaining the skill. Because if they're not, I may need to reteach them. And then PR stands for probe. A probe session might be something that you conduct during the teaching plan. It might be something that is implemented after an extended break where you want to reestablish where the student is in performing this skill with these targets. Because they've been out of school for a week or two because of like a holiday break or an illness. A probe session might be something that the SLP or the OT checking in on this particular skill during their SLP or OT pull-out sessions. Okay.
And you don't have to write anything down, everyone, because all that is in the manual on the page 10, all those abbreviations. Don't write it down. We got it.
And what staff will do when they are filling out this data sheet is they'll just circle one of these, right? And that the reason why that is this information is important because this information is then uploaded onto the ACE. Okay, that's gonna be important for data entry. Okay. Add row. The add row button at the bottom adds another row of data blocks to this data sheet. Okay. Now be mindful that when you add more rows, when you go to print this off, the data sheet will probably be across 2 pages. So I
Cormac,
recommend.
can I ask you a quick question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
This is Tina.
Okay.
So I have like this a very similar data sheet on, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this.
Mhm.
So where it says the teacher, and then it would be left, middle, and right. My skill or my lesson plan was for word recognition, like sight words.
Mhm.
So it's not a matching goal. So teacher would just be, I wouldn't be showing him the word, I would just be the word that I'm requesting. So I don't really need to have any material for the T goal other than my head.
Yes, the T is not actually teacher, it stands for target.
Target.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So let's pretend, to your point, you're looking at the same data sheet. Let's say your sight words are banana, apple, orange. What that means for trial 1, I'm going to have the banana word on the right, or sorry, on the left, apple in the middle, orange on the right. And for trial 1, I'm going to say, Timmy, show me where banana is. Show me the word banana, right? That's the target for trial 1. Whereas for trial 2, show me the word apple. Show me where the word orange is for trial 3, and so forth. So we're rotating through those 3 target sight words. Okay. So adding more rows will add more rows to your data sheet. If you add more rows, your data sheet is going to probably be spill across to a second page. So you might want to consider when you're printing the data sheet off to set up your printer to do double-side printing. Okay, that can be useful. Your print button is right there. So when you hit print, you will get a print menu up on your screen. Okay. So this data sheet will spill across 2 pages. Okay. Your save button might be important because you might make some changes to this data sheet. So what I mean by that is when you scroll up, you can type right on the data sheet. Okay. You can see I'm just typing a bunch of letters under student behavior. Okay. So I can add more information to this data sheet. Now, I wouldn't recommend, if this is a very big change to the lesson, I wouldn't recommend adding those changes to the data sheet. I'd recommend adding those changes to the lesson plan, because the lesson plan is like a permanent product of the changes that you're making. Okay, a permanent record of the changes that you're making. Yes.
It appears that you are editing the data sheet. I fell behind. How do you edit?
You just click where you want to type and then start typing. That's it. So you can right away. Sorry? Was that an okay or? Okay. So you can edit right on that data sheet. Okay. That's why the save button might be useful. Okay. Maybe you don't need to make any changes to these these data sheets. Maybe you want to just put the student's real last name up there, right? Remember Cormac's last name is Training. Okay, I want to put his whole last name up there because we don't use last names on the ACE. We abbreviate it. Maybe you want to add that to the data sheet. Okay. So that's how you can modify those data sheets. But again, the edits that you might make to the data sheet, I wouldn't be putting in whole scale changes to the lesson plan here. I would be using the edit feature on the full lesson plan, because when you change something in the lesson plan, when you change the prompt procedure, the prompt type, the fading procedure, the criteria, when you change that on the lesson edit page, the ACE logs that event. Okay, that's going to be important. So you have a record of all the changes you've made for this particular lesson. It's also going to be useful when you are doing some data analysis. Okay, there are some reports that you can run where you can add those specific changes to the graph to evaluate whether those changes have resulted in better progress for the student. Okay.
Is there a way to change the name of the data sheets when you save them?
So what would you like to save it or change the name to? Oh, you mean from like 1.01 to like?
So
something
mine
else?
is saving as like chain 1, and
Mhm.
I'd like it to say like right name or something like that.
Sure. That's an excellent question. I'm going to go ahead and just save this data sheet. I'm going to go into one of your TA lessons because you're in a TA lesson. I think it's a really good point you're bringing up. So I'm going to hit save right now. So save. Data sheet was saved. I'm going to click the OK button, and then I'm going to close down this data sheet. Okay. I come back to my previous tab. I'm going to quickly go into a TA lesson. So let's see. Here is a TA lesson for my picture activity schedule 1. I'm going to click generate data sheet, and my data sheet, my chain is called picture activity schedule. Here's why mine is called picture activity schedule and yours is called chain 1. When we go to the edit page, here's the edit page that we saw before. The same sections. The instructional plan is at the bottom, and the instructional plan for a TA is different, okay? Because it's the steps of the behavior chain that we're teaching, okay? What I did to change to have chain or a picture activity schedule show up instead of chain 1. Here is the name of the chain. You see, I have a little pencil to edit the chain name. Okay, so that's where you could click on this, delete chain 1 on your end, and type in whatever you want to call this chain. Okay, the reason why we default to chain 1 is because for certain lesson plans, you might add more than one behavior chain. So hand washing is a good example because the bathroom in the classroom is different from the bathroom outside the cafeteria. So you have to teach 2 different behavior chains. Or you've activated a lesson plan to teach Timmy how to complete a puzzle. But you want him to work on the superhero puzzle, but also the Paw Patrol puzzle, right? So you're going to add, add in 2 different behavior chains to teach. We're going to call behavior chain 1, the superhero puzzle, behavior chain 2, the Paw Patrol puzzle. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Perfect. Any other questions on editing our lesson plans or generating our data sheets? And for our TA lesson, for those of you who are not looking at one, here's our one for picture activity schedule. Generate data sheet. I'm going to select, there's only one chain that I have for this lesson plan, hit submit. There's our data sheet. Okay. You see the steps in the chain. You see a column for each teaching trial that I am implementing for this particular behavior chain. Okay, again, information pulled from the full lesson plan on how to teach this particular behavior chain. Okay, what type of chaining sequence you're utilizing, total task, how to prepare for a teaching trial, the initial instruction, what the prompt and prompt feeding procedure is, what to do when the student responds correctly or incorrectly, and then your criteria for prompt feeding, for contacting a supervisor, and mastery criteria. And like before, you can edit on the data sheet. Okay. Before we finish, I want to talk through one more data sheet option. If we click back to the app library, so click on app library at the top of the screen, and we go into the resources app. In the resources app, we have a number of generic data sheets. So data sheets that don't have all the lesson information that we just saw on the ones that we just generated. Okay. So we're going to click into classroom resources. We have a huge bank of resources. You will see a large number here, 19,000. Okay. Over on the left-hand side, if you click resource category and click data sheets, you will see a list of data sheets that we have available to you. These are generic data sheets. So for example, we were just looking at a 9-trial 3-stem array for a specific lesson. Here is a data sheet for 9-trial 3-stem array. but it's not going to have any lesson information on it. It's just data sheets. But this is a Word document. You can download and make edits to this, add in your own specific information, do whatever you want with it. Okay. We do have a number of data sheets that might be of interest to you. I'm just going to quickly show you them. An interspersed trials data sheet if you want to work on multiple skills at the same time, with instructions on how to use the data sheet, how to set it up. Programmed opportunities. Data sheets with multiple data blocks. Interspersed trials with a 3-stem array. So you're going to work on 2 different lesson plans, 2 different skills at the same time, but you're going to alternate what skill you're working on across teaching trials. And then lastly, trial interspersal across levels. Okay, if you're working on a lesson plan that has multiple levels and you want to embed the skill taught at each level across each teaching session, this might be an option that you might consider in terms of a data sheet. Okay, again, all these data sheets can be downloaded from the Classroom Resources app. They are all Word documents you can download and then make your changes to them. Take off the ACE logo, for example, put the Bancroft logo on, for example. Okay. So guys, that's what we're gonna this is where we're gonna wrap things up today. I do want to point out, because I understand that data sheets can be a little bit confusing in terms of how they're structured. Okay. I'm gonna click on App Library again. I quickly referenced the Help Center last week. Help Center has a lot of useful resources to explain how to do different things. I know that John and Katerina have pulled some of these resources to make your Bancroft ACE manual. Okay. There are resources in here that you can look at that will explain our teaching procedures and explain our data blocks. If you go into the curriculum section of the Help Center and click on overview of data blocks, this will give you information on the data blocks and give you specific instructions on when you might utilize one over the other. Okay. Anything to add, John or Katerina?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say that just that we have a couple minutes here where people can work after hours and all this, but in terms of this, but just kind of continue figuring out, trying this stuff. I know people wanted to kind of tie up some loose ends that they're working. Cormac, you're a little more fluent than we are at this, so folks are going to, it's taking them a little longer, but either way, we're progressing real nicely. And next week, when we gather again, we'll have an opportunity to kind of touch base on where we are in the week since, and then we'll talk about the next steps, which has to do with data entry.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and the rest of your week, and I'll see you guys next week, next Thursday at 3.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.